take out the Johnny Dangs and put in the Geos. I'm sorry.
The sentence was not real. Let that land for a second. Because millions of people watched the videos. Millions of people saw the headlines. Millions of people shared the clips, federal agents entering the store arrest sequences, courtroom moments, and processed all of it as documented reality before they ever thought to ask whether any of it had actually happened. The sentence that had the entire rap world talking in April 2026. The raid that every reaction channel was covering. The prison time that sent the internet into a full meltdown about what rappers were wearing around their necks and in their mouths. None of it existed in any court document anywhere. Because none of it happened. Johnny Dang was not charged with anything. He was not convicted of anything. He was not sentenced to anything. There was no raid on his Houston store confirmed by any mainstream news outlet, any police report, any court filing. The federal agents entering his flagship on Richmond Avenue, AI generated. The arrest sequence, fabricated. The courtroom footage, built by accounts chasing clicks using tools advanced enough that a viewer scrolling at normal speed could not tell the difference between synthetic content and real documentary footage. But here is the thing that makes this story more disturbing than a simple lie. The fabricated footage did not spread because people are gullible. It spread because it was dropped into a container of real events. Real tension. Real beef. Real questions that the culture had been sitting with for months before the first deepfake ever hit anyone's timeline. And that combination, real history plus fake footage, created something that moved faster than any correction could follow. By the end of this breakdown, you're going to understand exactly how a 30-year legacy built from a flea market stall in South Houston almost got destroyed by AI content that never happened, and what the actual documented story underneath all the fabrication really looks like. Every detail verified. Every claim sourced. No fiction added to a story that is already extraordinary on its own.
I'm gonna take out the Johnny Dangs and put in the Geos. I'm sorry. I'm taking out these and I'm upgrading to these.
Let us get into all of it. April 2026. Fox 26 in Houston is covering the Johnny Dang situation. And they are not covering it as a fraud case. They are not covering it as a federal investigation. They are covering it as an AI deepfake smear campaign. A coordinated attack on a Houston businessman and 25 years of work he built from nothing, executed using fabricated video that millions of people watched and processed as real. Here is what was actually happening underneath the reaction content and the outrage and the diamond test of videos and the artist commentary. The videos spreading across YouTube and TikTok with titles screaming about raid sentences and prison time were in large part built on hyper-realistic AI-generated content. Not clips edited out of context. Not real footage given a misleading spin. Fully fabricated scenarios generated by AI tools advanced enough that the average viewer watching at regular scroll speed could not distinguish what they were seeing from real documentary footage. Federal agents entering Dang's store. Arrest sequences. Courtroom moments. None of it happened. All of it looked real enough to share. All of it looked credible enough to send the culture into exactly the kind of spiral that the people who made these videos wanted it to generate. And here is where it gets dangerous. A deepfake on its own is just a video. It does not carry weight on its own until you place it inside a container of real events. Put a fabricated raid video in a vacuum and it might fool some people for a few hours before it gets fact-checked. But put that same fabricated video inside a story the audience already knows. A story with real tension, real history, real public conflict involving real names the culture already cares about, and that video does not need to be verified. It confirms what people already half believed. It gives form to a suspicion that was already living in comment sections and DMs and conversations between artists watching from the side. The real events gave the fabricated footage the credibility it needed to explode. The AI deepfakes moved into that container and set it off. As of April 2026, no court records, no police reports, and no mainstream Houston outlet had confirmed any raid, any charges, or any sentence. The claims that rappers had filed fraud complaints against Dang, unverified. The prison sentence in every reaction title. Fiction built by accounts chasing clicks, not reporting reality. The insane sentence everybody was reacting to existed only in YouTube titles designed to get you to click before you thought to ask whether any of it was actually true. To understand why the fabricated footage hit as hard as it did, why it found an audience already primed to believe the worst, you need to understand what Johnny Dang actually built and how he built it. Because nothing about this story makes sense without the foundation. Johnny Dang. Born Giang An Toan in 1973 in Gia Lai Province, Vietnam. His father was a Vietnam War soldier who got on a boat in 1987, made it to Texas, and opened a small jewelry repair operation in South Houston. He left his whole family behind for 9 years while he tried to construct something from nothing in a country that was not his. Then 1996. Johnny is 23 years old. Barely speaking English. No connections. No blueprint. No industry knowledge. No relationships. He touches down in the United States, links up with his father at a South Houston flea market, and starts where the story says you start when you have nothing else. Not a showroom. Not a velvet rope. A stall. 2 hands. A grind. What made Johnny different from the very beginning was not just craft. It was the ability to read a room that most people in the jewelry industry were not paying attention to. He taught himself CAD software. He studied what hip-hop was actually asking for. Bigger stones, wilder settings, more personality, more flex, and started building in directions nobody else in his space was moving toward. The industry was sleeping. He was not. By 1998, he had opened TV jewelry inside Sharpstown Mall. And the piece of innovation that was going to put his name on the culture forever was already in motion. Custom grills. Grills were not new to hip-hop. They had existed. But the process of getting them had a problem that kept a lot of people out. The standard approach required filing teeth down to make the fit work. Permanently. Painfully. A lot of artists wanted the look but were not willing to get their actual teeth permanently altered to achieve it. Johnny figured out how to engineer a custom secure grill without filing down a single tooth. That one technical innovation alone swung the door wide open. And the people walking through that door were exactly the kind of artists whose cosign could put a jeweler on the map permanently. Around 2000 to 2002, Houston rapper Paul Wall pulled up to the flea market, saw what Johnny was doing, and the two locked in. Wall had the relationships inside Houston's rap scene. He knew everybody who mattered. Johnny had the technical edge nobody else had. Together they started pushing grills from a niche Houston thing to something the whole country was pulling up for by name. Then came the moment that turned the shop into a cultural institution. A different jeweler sold Nelly a grill and passed it off as authentic Johnny Dang work. T.I., who thought the piece was genuine, called Paul Wall looking to get Nelly the real thing. Wall and Dang had never even connected with Nelly directly. But instead of correcting the confusion and moving on, they made the move that most people would not make. They built Nelly a custom $20,000 grill. And they just sent it to him. No invoice. No payment required. Pure goodwill investment in a relationship that did not yet exist. That decision led to a feature on Nelly's 2005 Smash Grills. Number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Grammy nomination. Johnny Dang in the video. For the first time his name was attached to a number 1 record, not as a vendor but as a cultural participant. From there the names kept coming. Beyoncé. Lil Wayne. Travis Scott. Megan Thee Stallion. Gucci Mane. Post Malone. Generational artists back-to-back, all pulling up to the same shop in Houston. He built custom invisible baguette settings nobody had seen before. That Mexican OT dropped a track literally called Johnny Dang. He jumped on Paul Wall's Stay Iced Up. By 2016, Johnny Dang and Company had opened a 16,000 square foot flagship store in Houston. The biggest custom jewelry and grill shop in the world. A team running it. A VIP grills wall displaying the tooth molds and photos of every celebrity client. In hip-hop, a jeweler is not just a jeweler. They are family. They know your budget. They know your taste. They know what you are trying to communicate when you pull up somewhere dripped out in a specific piece. That is a level of access and intimacy that almost nobody else in an artist's circle gets to hold. Johnny Dang had earned that trust with some of the most powerful people in this industry over nearly 30 years. Which is exactly why what came next cut so deep. Because it did not come from an outsider throwing noise. It came from somebody who had been sitting at the table. Before the AI deepfakes. Before the reaction channels. Before the diamond tester videos and the Senate-level outrage and the fraud narrative spreading at algorithmic speed. There was a real situation. Real tension. Real documented public conflict that gave the fabricated footage something genuine to attach itself to. And that real situation started with Sauce Walka. Houston rapper. One of the most recognizable faces in Johnny Dang's entire client book for years. They had history documented publicly. Photographs together, pieces worn in videos on stage in every interview. By most accounts, Walka had dropped somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million at Johnny Dang and Company over the course of their relationship. He was not just a customer. He was a walking, breathing advertisement for what the shop could produce at the absolute top end of its capabilities. Then August 2024. Walka went on Instagram Live and blew the whole thing up. He jumped on to show off a new grill. Not from Dang. From Plug Geo, real name Jose Mata, A man who had been one of the top salespeople at Johnny Dang and Company before leaving around 2021 and building his own competing operation. The piece Waka was showing off was a $1 million permanent grill. Not removable. In his mouth for life. And the way he announced the switch left zero room for interpretation. I'm taking these out and putting in the geos. Upgrading to these. Upgrading. That word did the damage. He was not just switching jewelers. He was publicly calling the switch an improvement, and doing it in the direction of a man who had worked the floor of Dang's own shop. Every person watching that live understood immediately what was being communicated. Johnny did not go through a PR team. He went straight to camera. When you use my name, please say it right. And don't mess up my name in your mouth. I did nothing wrong to you. That was not a business response. That was a man who felt personally violated. Years of loyalty, years of pulling up for someone, and now his name was the punchline in another man's promotional announcement. It landed harder because Houston's scene is tight. This was not beef between strangers. This was something that happened between people who had history. And Dang revealed the detail that made the whole thing sting even more. He had already reached out to Waka. Already acknowledged it was time for his next piece. He had even invited him to dinner to discuss it. And Waka had left that on red before jumping on live to retire the Dang pieces in front of the whole internet. Waka's response made clear he did not see it the same way. To him, it was a business decision. An upgrade. Nothing personal. Just a move. But the move was not neutral, and everyone watching could see that. Plug Geo was not some random jeweler Waka had found online. This was someone who had worked Dang's floor-built relationships with his clients, then left to build a competing operation. Choosing him specifically out of every jeweler available was a message. And Dang responded with his own videos showing pieces he said he could have built for Waka, turning the whole thing into a creative back and forth where grills were the diss tracks. By late 2024, footage of Waka and Dang together at a Houston community event suggested the two had publicly squashed it. But the questions the whole situation had put into the world, about quality, about what clients were actually getting for their money, about whether the loyalty had ever been mutual, those did not disappear when the cameras cut away. They lived in comment sections, in DMs between artists who had been watching, in conversations between managers and their clients about whether Dang was still the move. That was the container. That was the real tension sitting in the culture already hot and waiting. And in March and April 2026, the AI deepfakes moved straight into it. Here is where we separate what is real from what the algorithm wanted you to believe was real. As of April 2026, no court records confirmed any raid on Johnny Dang's store. No police reports documented any arrest. No Houston mainstream outlet confirmed any federal investigation. No verified fraud complaints from any named rapper were on record in any accessible public document. No sentence existed in any court filing because no charges existed in any court filing. Johnny Dang had not been charged with anything. He had not been convicted of anything. He was not facing prison time. The sentence in every reaction title was not in any courtroom because it had never been handed down. Look at what Dang's actual response during this period looked like. Back-to-back camera appearances. Shop walkthroughs where he showed inventory and process. Direct callouts of specific accounts making specific false claims. His Instagram, 4 million plus followers, became a continuous rebuttal operation. That is not how a man under a real federal investigation moves. A man under a real federal investigation follows his attorney's advice and says as little as possible publicly. He does not go live from his shop floor multiple times a week specifically calling out false claims by name. He does not invite camera crews to document his operations and his team. That is how a man moves when he is watching something he built over 30 years get dragged through fabricated mud and his only available weapon is his own platform and his own face. There is also the matter of Paul Wall, the man who has been Dang's partner since the early 2000s, who built this empire alongside him, who brought the first wave of hip-hop clientele through the door, who knows the operation from the ground up more than almost anyone alive. Wall never created an inch of public distance during any of this. No quiet separation. No vague statements in interviews suggesting concerns. He stayed locked in through all of it. And for anyone trying to genuinely weigh whether the fraud narrative had any real foundation, Wall's continued loyalty carried significant weight. He would have had every reason to create distance if the shop had genuinely been running a scheme against clients he had personally brought to the table. The lab-grown diamond question is real and it deserves honest treatment. Lab-grown diamonds are not fake diamonds. They are not cubic zirconia or imitation glass. They are chemically and physically identical to naturally mined stones. The difference is in origin. One formed over billions of years deep in the earth, one grown in a controlled laboratory environment over weeks. And the difference in price is enormous. Lab-grown stones run 70 to 90% cheaper to produce than naturally mined equivalents. If a jeweler is charging natural VVS prices and putting lab-grown stones in a piece, the margin on that transaction is significant. And the violation is deeply personal because the client did not just lose money. They bought a $100,000 symbol of who they are and where they have arrived. And the foundation of that symbol was misrepresented. That is the real underlying question the culture has been asking. Not whether Johnny Dang went to prison, he did not. But whether the clients who spent enormous sums based on trust received exactly what they paid for. That question has not been definitively answered with certified independent documentation in the public record. And it remains the only genuinely unresolved question in this entire story. Everything else, the raid, the arrest, the sentence, the fraud charges, those are the fiction. The diamond origin question is the reality underneath the fiction that the deepfakes hijacked and amplified. Step back from Johnny Dang specifically and look at what this entire situation illustrates about where we are in 2026. A 30-year legacy built from absolute zero, from a flea market stall in South Houston by a man who arrived in the United States at 23 with limited English and no connections, nearly got destroyed in 72 hours by AI-generated content that was placed into a container of real cultural tension and allowed the algorithm to do the rest. The number of AI-generated videos online grew from approximately 500,000 in 2023 to approximately 8 million by 2025. Nearly 900% growth in synthetic media in 2 years. The tools that produce this content have gotten exponentially more sophisticated at the same speed that their price has dropped towards zero. Anyone with enough motivation and basic technical access can now produce footage indistinguishable from real documentary video at essentially no cost. And the internet does not sort content by accuracy. It sorts content by engagement. The headline that hip-hop's most famous jeweler was raided by federal agents for selling fake diamonds to Beyoncé and Lil Wayne is not a headline that anyone scrolls past. It is a headline that generates clicks, that generates shares, that generates reaction content, that generates more clicks in an accelerating loop that the algorithm actively rewards. The correction was fighting an uphill battle against a story that was engineered to spread before it could be verified. Dang's rebuttals reached his 4 million followers. The fabricated content reached everyone's algorithm. This is the new battlefield for anyone with a public profile and a business built on trust and reputation. Not a courtroom. Not a legitimate investigation. A content ecosystem where the line between documented reality and synthetic fabrication has become thin enough that the average viewer cannot reliably distinguish between them, and where the incentive structure of every major platform actively rewards the content that moves fastest regardless of whether it is true. What also got exposed in this story, in the space between the fake footage and the real cultural questions, is something the hip-hop jewelry industry has been quietly sitting with for years. In the culture, artists drop enormous sums at custom jewelry shops based almost entirely on personal trust and reputation. There is no standardized verification process. There is no routine third-party certification required for every stone before a piece leaves the shop. The whole ecosystem runs on relationships and on taking the jeweler's word about what is inside what you just paid for. That arrangement works perfectly when the trust is genuine. It creates enormous vulnerability when it is not. And the events of 2024 and 2026, the real conflict between Dang and Waka, the questions from Plug Geo, the diamond tester content that flooded social media, forced a conversation into the center of a stadium-sized cultural audience that had never had to have it publicly before. Johnny Dang came from a flea market stall in South Houston. He built a 16,000 square foot cultural institution. He has a #1 record attached to his name. He has the teeth of hip-hop's most iconic artists carrying his work. That story did not end in a courtroom. The sentence that had the internet going crazy exists only in the titles of videos designed to get you to click before you thought to verify whether any of it was actually true. Here is what remains when the noise dies down and the reaction content cycles past and the algorithm moves on to the next manufactured crisis. The fabricated footage is gone in the sense that its moment has passed. But the real questions it hijacked and amplified, those do not disappear when the deepfakes get debunked. The diamond origin question. The transparency question. The question of what artists across the culture are actually receiving when they wire 6 or 7 figures into a custom jewelry transaction based on personal trust and a decades-long relationship. Those questions are now permanently in the cultural conversation in a way they were not before 2024. And they are not going to be resolved by any single public statement or shop walkthrough or 4-part Instagram video series. What would resolve them is something the hip-hop jewelry world has never been required to implement. Independent certified third-party documentation for every stone above a certain value threshold before a piece leaves any major custom shop. Not a trust exercise. Not a relationship. a documented chain of custody for what the client is actually purchasing. Several artists reacted to the 2026 wave by getting pieces independently tested. Chief Keef publicly pulled up to a third-party jeweler in California and ran his dang pieces through a professional diamond tester. Both pieces registered clean under standard thermal and conductivity protocols. That result went in Dang's favor, but as the culture correctly noted, the tester Chief Keef used measures whether a stone is a diamond. It cannot distinguish between a lab-grown diamond and a naturally mined diamond. Those require spectroscopic analysis equipment that does not exist at most retail jewelry counters. The standard tester cleared the pieces. The deeper question remained unanswered. Dang's operation continues. His platform continues. Paul Wall's loyalty continues. The shop is still running, still taking orders, still operating at the level that 30 years of cultural investment produces. But the world it is operating in now, the world where synthetic footage of a raid can be made and distributed and believed by millions in the time it takes a real investigation to actually begin, that world is permanently different from the one the shop was built in. And the question for everyone watching, for every artist with pieces they have not had independently certified, for every jeweler whose business runs on trust and reputation, for every person in this culture who understands that jewelry is never just jewelry, is what accountability actually looks like in that world. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Did you believe the sentence was real when the videos first hit? Do you think the hip-hop jewelry industry needs mandatory independent certification before any piece above a certain value leaves any shop? And what does it tell you about 2026 that a 30-year legacy built from absolute zero can be put under genuine threat by footage that was never real? Thanks for watching. If you had a good time, keep the adventure alive by clicking on one of the suggested videos on your screen right now for more amazing content.